Welcome to Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, brought to you by Byrne Production Services. Here, we explore the different ways business events can bring value to your organization, the latest technological advances in the event space, as well as providing you with actionable strategies to make a business event a success. Let's create an exceptional event experience.
Welcome to another episode of Production Value Matters, the business events podcast. Today, I'm joined by close personal friend, Janice Cardinale, the founder of Event Minds Matter, a community-led organization of like-minded event professionals who have come together to build brave spaces and amplify the industry's conversation on mental health and well-being. I'm really grateful that we get a chance to speak with you, Janice, today. And as the well-being of event professionals across the spectrum is really important. And I'm a big advocate for this as well. So welcome, Janice.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm excited about being here, and I'm excited about seeing you again.
Yeah, it's been a while, so it's lovely to see you again.
Absolutely.
So tell me about your events career, your mental health advocacy career, and then how those two intertwined.
In 2020, when we had to face a new world, I actually stepped away from the company that I had led for 20 years, the Idea Hunter. My daughter took that over, and I sort of sat back and waited for, the things to surface out. And I wrote an article actually on LinkedIn about mental health and what was happening within our industry. And it attracted a tremendous amount of attention to the point where I felt that this may be a new opportunity for me to really dig in deep to some of the stresses and the burnout feelings that people were having and that continue to have. So I began with a small group of like-minded event professionals, and we established a community called Event Minds Matter, which really, as you've just described, is building brave spaces, although we are now on a mission to try to mandate psychological safety training within our industry, which does not exist. And we can get into more of that, as we talk.
And so the question I'm sure many of us are looking for an answer for is, can you tell me what main mental challenges are people working in the events industry facing and why they're unique to our industry?
There are multiple reasons, but the biggest reasons are a lack of staff, where they might have been in a team in the past of 10 people, they're now one. There is a lot of still toxic leadership, an expectation of the leaders on their employees to perform at very high levels on a pretty regular basis. And, it's funny, I was reading something the other day about unionizing our industry. And it was somebody who had written about this on LinkedIn. And I kind of looked at it and thought, it's not such a crazy idea. There are venues that you go to or areas that you go to that, the workers are unionized. The problem in our industry is that it's always been taken for granted that if you come into this industry, you're going to be working depending on how many hours on the job, and you're going to get loo time for that. And I think that people have reached a point where loo time is not good enough. And yet this is what's always been done. So the question is, as far as the labor board is concerned, if somebody works more than 8 hours a day throughout the entire week, they should be paid for that time. So people are caught right now a little bit in how to manage this with the employees that are on site for a job for, let's say, 10 or 12 hours. I mean, in AV, what goes on. You start extremely early, sometimes the day before, and, you're on it on all the time. So how do you, get better at what you do? There has been an enormous amount of Band-Aid solutions that have been presented in our industry by various organizations, plus benefits. Millions of dollars are being spent on benefits. But here's the problem, Matthew, that you can go out and get therapy for your depression or your anxiety or your stress, but you still have to come back to the workplace. And if the workplace culture is not caring, then it's still going to be a problem for you because there's still the fear the shame and the stigma of who can we talk to? Is there a brave space within the organization to have a conversation about something that's not feeling right for somebody? And therein lies where the leader doesn't know how to recognize that and or what to say to that person because they have not maybe taken an emotional intelligence course or know how to even respond to somebody who's struggling.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on something which I think is the most important crux of all of this is that safe space and that openness to dialogue. That if your leadership is not aware of it, or either through error or omission, or through ignorance, I think it's an important role that something like Event Minds Matter can fill within the industry to educate. And so just want to shift for a second. Over 38 years, I'm sure some main causes of some mental health issues have changed, from completely different from what they are today. I mean, you had mentioned the pandemic, which was obviously a huge immediate crisis moment that drove a lot of that. But have you seen any sort of changes over the many years? We can talk about workload and we can talk about working conditions, which have been up and down, and we all have horror stories. But has stuff changed in that, gotten better, worse, or different since the pandemic?
I think that it has, in terms of bringing the subject matter out into the open. I can tell you that I did a 3-month due diligence project for myself by going to leaders across North America and asking them if they would be willing to tell their truth about their journey over this last few years and even before. And I had a great response to that. And every week, we bring somebody else on and they would tell their story. And what I believe that does for the industry is it opens the door to people reading it, listening to it, and feeling a little less, overcome by it because they've always been afraid to say anything. But when a leader steps out and says something, bingo, it gives way to other people to feel more comfortable and more confident about being able to speak about themselves. So I think this is sort of it's done a 360. So, I mean, if we look before the pandemic, there was nobody speaking about mental health, and it certainly wasn't anything that would have come to a meeting or a conference. And now you look today at the big change of how everybody's trying to, make wellness a priority at the event. The problem is that our leaders, and I'm talking about the leaders of associations, to be very honest with you, are not making it a priority. Because I think that a lot of the leaders of companies feel that, they've done enough, but they haven't done enough. All they've done is provide and spend more money on people, but that money runs out eventually. So I'm not sure where this whole thing is going at this moment.
There's sort of 3 interesting things I wanted to sort of talk on or connect to in what you just said. So the first one was that sort of fear and stigma. And I was recently listening to an episode of Simon Sinek's podcast where he was talking about mental health and vulnerability, and he told this story about him and his group of friends. During the pandemic, were feeling very isolated, and somebody did some research and said that a human being requires 8 minutes of person-to-person contact. Like they did studies and said if you minimum 8 minutes of talking to another human being will give you all of the things you need to feel better. And so what they were noticing was that there was this fear and stigma around reaching out for help. And that, he tells the story of a friend was going through some kind of crisis and was doing very poorly. And he said, "Hey, why didn't you reach out to me?" And the friend had said to him, "Oh, I texted you 15 times." And he felt terrible. So he looked through his phone and it was like, "Hey, what are you doing? What, you want to go for a beer? Blah, blah, blah." It was very innocuous. And he said, I had no idea that you needed help that much. So they started a code between them that said, if we ever text each other with the phrase, do you have 8 minutes? It allowed them the freedom to like throw up a smoke signal and say, hey, I need this help. So the second thing I wanted to touch on was, I do see that I think you're right that the leadership or associations or broader organizations might not be offering that leadership in this, but the groundswell, I would say, is much better. That despite an association not sort of coming out and saying, hey, we're offering these mental health tools or resources, and I encountered this last night at an event. I spoke to a competitor and a colleague, and we spent 25 minutes after the event just sitting down and talking about our fears and talking about what we were worried about. And it was certainly cathartic and therapeutic. And so I think that there's, and I wonder if you see that as well, that on the, sort of in the outside of leadership, the people who are actually on the ground, they're making that a priority and they're doing that sharing, and they're not waiting for leadership to present them opportunity.
I do, Matthew. I see it a lot now. The truth is that when I was in Edmonton for Go West, I thought that they did a really fabulous job of bringing the speakers on for no more really than 15, 20 minutes. And what happened after that was that we went into breakout rooms after lunch and spent the entire afternoon with different groups coming in. So I was on for 3 hours, 45 minutes on the hour, and I would get groups of 20 people in a round circle, and we would just talk in a safe space. And, this was really enjoyed by everybody, because this was an opportunity to, and this is what I call community, to be honest with you, is that you're in a micro situation. You ask them some questions and bingo, people start to talk, people resonate with other people who are comfortable talking about themselves because other people are talking about something that's very personal. That's what our industry needs more of. And this is what I believe that the trade shows need to address, is that if you're going to bring in speakers, bring them in for shorter periods of time, but then give them those breakouts, because I think that people want to meet the speakers. And if they have something, no matter whether or not it's, emotional health and well-being or psychological safety training or whatever the case may be, I think that's a big, big trend. I also believe that with psychological safety training, which I think people have a perception of it, that it's very expensive, and it's not. The reality of what psychological safety training is to teach you how to recognize a problem, how to address that problem, to give you the credible resources, because right now there's a lot of resources out there, but they're not all credible. There's a whole bunch of coaches out there that didn't train, to be honest with you, in mental health, so to speak, okay? Even HR. I have been in front of HR people who are looking after 4,000, 7,000, 10,000 people, and who say they've never taken an emotional intelligence course. They don't know how to respond. I mean, would you know how to respond to somebody who is going through a struggle? This is something we need to teach people. We teach people how to market. We teach people how to sell. Why can't we teach people how, to speak to other people? Because that's what you call a caring culture. A lot of people use the words about caring, but they're not doing anything about showing that they care in the way that care, I think, is going to be prioritized. And I think in the next year, to be very honest with you, a lot of governments are going to come up and say, you have to do this now. Here's something really interesting, a statistic. We are considered the 6th most stressful job in our industry, yet the first 5 were mandated for mental health training. So why is it as the 6th one we're not? Like, what is it about this training that, everybody's struggling to actually implement? I'll tell you who's going to make the most money off of it are the insurance companies, because they're going to package it generically, sell it to you, because that you're used to dealing with so-and-so, and they're just going to get richer, because that's really what's going on, is that insurance companies package this generically with whoever they're working with. So it's a really tough mountain climbing this, and I go through this every day, but the content that's coming out is proving the facts of what people are really going through. And quite frankly, I think it's going to get worse. It will not get better. Why do I say that? Because AI is right behind us, okay? And people are, especially elders, are afraid of losing their jobs because there will be certain, jobs that become eliminated. And what do you think people are going to do then? It's like and on and on and on and on. So I don't have the answer to that, but I do believe that that's going to cause more anguish, more desperation, more people on the street. The picture's sort of been painted already. So, the devil in the deep blue sea is what I say.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about Hello, My Name is Human. What is it and how did you come up with it? And does it have a core, explain a little bit about the core message?
Hello, My Name is Human came about because I wanted to try something at a trade show last summer. And I didn't want my name on my badge. I wanted just Hello, My Name is Human because in my mind, the trends coming into 2024 were about safety, trust, and human sustainability. So to attract people to the subject matter that we focus on, I decided to try this campaign to see how people would respond to me at a show if I had a badge that said, Hello, my name is Human. And of course, I got varied responses from it. Some were, well, I'm human too. Some were, is that your real company name? Hello, my name is Human. I had people say, are you an AI robot? Kind of crazy. But the one thing that I can tell you is when I got up to speak about it in Edmonton, I started off by saying, hello, my name is Human. But that's not the name my parents gave me. Because 9 times out of 10, what happens when you go to a trade show or a conference is you'll meet a variety of different people, but you will not remember their names. It's how that person makes you feel. That's what you remember. So it's just like if I go to an interview to get a job, what's going to separate me from the next person, getting that job? So it's that human spirit. It's that way of being that is kind, empathetic, caring, trusting. They make you feel safe in their company. So I am actually, what's really interesting, as I have been talking to so many people right across the globe, is that I cannot believe how many organizations do not meet once a week, like their teams. I don't know why that is. I know as a former employer with a business that we met once a week to talk about what happened last week, what's going to happen this week, and it was always on a Monday. That doesn't seem to happen with a lot of companies that I ask, and I often ask them, why is that? And they don't really have an answer. Everybody is so busy, so running here, there, and everywhere that the things that really matter to glue a team together seem to have been lost. And I say, as a leader today, you need to be a teacher, a coach, and a mentor. And if a leader is not like that, then you're going to have a problem. The company is never going to have the culture that you hope for. So the reverse now is happening at jobs. I think the employees are interviewing the employers, quite frankly. They want to know that they're buying into a caring culture. They want to spend their career in a place where they are growing and have opportunities. And, you'll see that a lot with the younger generation and the startups. But you don't see it a lot with the established organizations who, if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wonder if, as we spoke about earlier, that, it's sort of the culture of the industry, that it's that hustle, it's that movement, it's that, as soon as you said, organizations aren't having those weekly check-in meetings. All I really thought about is like, well, maybe that's because, the demands of every client and those client meetings are superseding those, right? So, certainly as an organization, we have a weekly meeting that, is rather sacred. We don't, I make sure that nobody ever puts a client call at that time period. But I can understand how an organization may feel that pressure of like, well, I can't find 10 minutes in my day, let alone an hour to block out. But personally, I think that's a choice. So tell me a little bit about like any of the courses that you or training that you offer to help people through Event Minds Matter. Like what are they specializing in, and how do you update them as time goes on?
The We Care program is the program that we recommend. We don't sell this program for any dollars and cents. This program initially came out of Australia from two gentlemen that have won many awards for their health and safety training. And it was purchased in North America by Mental Health Innovations out of Vancouver. The woman who is in charge of this is a member of my community. Her name is Leslie Bennett. She spent 20 years at JPDL. And that's the other thing. Everybody in my community has had experience in the industry. They may not be in the industry now, like Leslie. She's in the mental health industry, but she was, and so she understands. This program starts at $95. You can do an online course, which is 45 minutes, okay? And that gets you a micro-credential from Dalhousie, and you are on your own learning the course. Or if you're a leader and you want to take the course that's actually guided by an instructor, that's $250, and that's a 3-hour course, and a very valuable one that, some people have already taken and have, come back with accolades. So these are the kinds of things they teach you, again, how to recognize the problem, the language around mental health and how to speak to people, the listening aspect, credible resources are given to you. And quite frankly, you're part of a lifetime membership with the company. So anything new that comes out is something that you're going to get, in your hands through your inbox. So it's really understanding how to speak to somebody. For example, if you're going through a problem and you've come to me and you say to me, Janice, I just am not myself lately. I've got stuff at home, whatever, and I'm finding the hours and I need a break and I need to be, I would say to you, I acknowledge what you're saying, Matthew. I respect what you're saying. And then I would repeat what you've told me so that I can be very clear that I listened to what it is that was bothering you. And then I'm not here to be a therapist, clinician, or psychiatrist, but I will give you credible resources and I will give you flexibility to say, okay, you need a couple of weeks off, go and take it. Because if you don't deal with it in this way, in a gentle and kind way, and make that person feel like they're cared for and appreciated, they're going to leave you anyways. End of story. And this is what happens. There are companies that are going through staff left, right, and center. Nobody really wants that. Everybody wants to be a cohesive collective group, but again, in speaking to so many people, there is just a lot of unhappy people out there right now. People don't see it in our industry because it's masked. I see it because people come to me knowing that we have this community and that we're good listeners and that we might have some suggestions for them. But it's absolutely mind-boggling what's going on. And by the way, people are still being let go because they have ADHD. Like in your entire life, if you can believe, and that does happen. And what the companies do, they run to get you to sign an NDA before you get any advice from a lawyer. So I always tell people, be aware. Do not sign anything. And that is a big message that I'm telling those who are listening to your show. Wait and get the advice you need. Call the labor board. Find out what your human rights are. Because there's a lot of things happening that shouldn't be happening. And that from a World Health Organization point of view, they're coming down hard on organizations around the world. You cannot let somebody go because they have a mental health struggle. You have to help them to get better, by guiding them or navigating them, and then they come back. I have somebody in my community right now who's going through this. And he was somebody who I said, do not sign their NDA. And he didn't. And now he's, but he's still very concerned about going back to work. And he's been off for a few months because there was something very serious that was wrong. But doesn't give somebody the right to fire them,
It's interesting that I see the parallel between, 15, 20 years ago, where WSIB here in Canada or OSHA down in the United States, they really sort of turned their attention to our industry and said things like, and this is going to sound ridiculous to some people who are listening and maybe you as well. They turned to this industry and said, no, you have to wear steel toe boots. You have to wear safety gear. You have to have a hard hat. And that was a big shock to our industry at that time. I personally remember crew complaining about it and management going, "Oh, we have to do that." But now one hopes. I say one hopes because to this day, I still walk into a venue every once in a while and go, "Why isn't anybody wearing a hard hat? There's rigging going on. This is a construction zone." And so it's certainly gotten better. It's not perfect. There's always violations. But, do you think that, as you said, the governments and regulatory bodies are going to start looking at our industry? And as you said, we're number 6 on that list, and everybody above us on this list has this mandatory insurance training, due diligence requirements for their industry. Do you think that I think you said it earlier that you think that's going to happen to our industry. So where does management go to get ahead of that in leadership? Assuming that they want to, they're interested in helping to further that along the progress.
They take a We Care course. They understand all the elements about it, and then they decide whether or not they want their managers to be part of that. And then maybe the employees take an online course of $95. When I think of what the benefits cost to send somebody to a therapist today, let's say you get covered for $2,000 as an example. You can go for X amount of therapy sessions. Well, how long does that last? 10 sessions, right? A minimum of $250 an hour. So what happens then? And even if they had $5,000, okay, they still have to come back to the same workplace, right? And the workplace is toxic, or the workplace doesn't care, or they don't meet once a week, or there's no brave spaces to have those conversations. This is my whole point. This is where there's a disconnect between leadership and what I think the culture has moved to. There are people who are doing that, but not enough people, by far not enough. So, this is what we're fighting right now. We just need one person to take the torch and run with it, because you always need a leader, and then you need followers, so I'm praying to God. I know this is going to be law soon, maybe even this year. I don't know, but I watch every day, I read every day. And, there's so many people speaking about this. There's so many, influencers, celebrities, media people talking about this kind of thing. I don't know at what point the important people of our industry are going to say, you know what, this is the right thing. And I will say this, Matthew, I never started Event Minds Matter for my generation. Okay. I started it for the next generation. Last year, I sit on the board at Seneca College for Event Management and Creative Design, and I'm the board chair. Last year, one of our students committed suicide. I have taken this to Seneca. We are talking about it this month, actually in March, because I feel that the students are a whole other situation. I think that they're very aware of where we stand on stressful career, and I don't think that we are providing them with enough information to help them to know how to handle it. When I went to Seneca before Christmas and I sat down with the students, there were 25 of them in the course this year. When I asked the question, what would you do if you were struggling with a mental health problem? Would you know where to go within the school? Not one of them said they knew. And yet it's in the course curriculum. Seneca actually does quite a bit, and they're building a whole new wellness center, which tells you something about that college. If Seneca's doing it, you know that other people will follow. It's needed because of COVID, and where a lot of these young people were stuck for a couple of years, and it really had an effect on them. So now they're coming into, the more mature courses, because at Seneca you need to have, a degree to get in and then take the course in event management. But I was blown away by what they didn't know. And the funny thing is that we started to talk very casually and I made them feel very safe. And it was amazing what came out. I think that day, the students really got to know one another in a different way than ever before. And that's what happens when you build a space and you bring people together and you make them feel comfortable with talking about it. And anybody can do this. I mean, every single company, be it small or big, can build a community within their organization. So it's the same as ERG. I mean, look what's happening, right? There are groups within large organizations, who have a particular interest in an area that, now they're looking for, and they have money, by the way. They have money that's given to them from the organization, and they can choose to use it in any way that they want. So again, these are things that, the insurance companies would love to be all over that all the time. But the insurance companies are just simply getting rich because of what they charge and how that works. Thousands of employees are giving everybody a $2,000, benefit plan for therapy, plus. That's a lot of money. So, some people pay into it, but some people don't. So everybody's in a different circumstance.
So Janice, I always like to end these episodes with practical steps. We always ask our guests, like, what should, an event professional who's listening today do? But I want to take a little bit more of a deep dive on that last question with you to understand that I want to take it from the interpretation of somebody who is caring for members of their team or members of their community. And they may be struggling with the question of, how do I recognize when somebody needs help, and how do I offer them help? And, very much to that example that I gave about Simon Sinek's group of friends, where they created a little code to say, hey, I need help. I don't think we're there yet, in our industry. I don't think we've all developed this secret, handshake sign that says I'm going through a crisis and I need some vulnerability. So what advice would you give somebody to say, if you see this is how you help?
A person who sees that usually is a very intuitive person, and not everybody's intuitive. But you can start by saying, are you okay? Just a question. How was your weekend? Are you okay? If you think somebody's going through something, ask them if they're okay. How are you? It's a kindness. We talk about kindness all the time. You've read a million articles on being kind, right? That's part of kindness. I say that, again, we don't know also how many leaders are going through their own struggle. Again, it all starts at the top. So if you were somebody running a company, go take a course for $250. It'll be the cheapest thing you ever did in your lifetime. It'll probably bring you the best productivity and ROI ever. Again, you have to build this. It's not something that is going to just automatically appear. You have to bring your teams together. You have to sit around a table and ask them what they need, what they want, I believe that open communication is extremely important, and collectively you come up with ideas and thought leadership that provoke a new kind of thinking. And I think what you'll see is that people feel more committed to you as a leader and to the organization, because the organization cares in a variety of different ways. And there are different things that organizations do. And I think that, we have to accept remote work. It's not going away. I think we have to accept flexibility. People need to be flexible in the way that they think. And I think that, this hustle word, which I don't ever use, and by the way, mental health for me now has become emotional health and well-being. Because the younger generation, I think when we use the word mental, there will always be a connotation to it, in my mind or your mind. So we've decided to step away from the mental health, even though it is a mental health training. But not everybody we know that everybody has mental health, but to what extreme, right? So I just want to take the mental out of the conversation, just for you to know for the future, because I think people respond better to emotion as a word. We all have been emotional over the last few years for a variety of different reasons. I'm sure we've all had a cry at some point or another, So, and that's okay, by the way.
Janice, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thank you again. This has been a really insightful episode.
I am very appreciative, to be honest with you. Anywhere I get to share my mission, I am very blessed and grateful.
Production Value Matters, the business event podcast, is brought to you by Byrne Production Services. To find out more about Byrne Production Services and how putting on events can drive value for your business, visit byrneproductionservices.com. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Production Value Matters, thank you so much for listening.